Hours later, Williams tugged at the collar of his dress uniform as he wove through the crowd of dignitaries at the embassy gala. Snatches of conversation drifted past him. A human soldier. Quaint that they still cling to such primitive concepts as honor and bravery. One shudders to imagine the fate of the galaxy if those apes had free rein. He gritted his teeth and scanned the room for Cran. There, the Daxamite ambassador was holding court near the bar, his carapace glinting in the light. Williams made his way over, snagging 2 glasses of wine from a passing server. "Ambassador Crayon," he said, handing the insectoid a drink. "A pleasure." Crayon's mandibles clicked. "Major Williams, I'm surprised you had the audacity to show your face here after that little outburst in the council chamber." Williams smiled tightly. He leaned in close, pressing the data chip into Crayon's claw as he did. "We know what you did," he whispered. "The Monroe Doctrine. Back off, or this goes public." Crayon stiffened, his compound eyes blazing with fury. For a moment, Williams thought the Daxamite would strike him, but then Crayon mastered himself and hissed, "You dare threaten me, ape? You have no idea the forces you are dealing with." Williams stepped back, still smiling. "Enjoy the party, Ambassador." He turned to leave, his heart hammering against his ribs. Almost there. Almost. The explosion rocked the building, sending guests screaming and tumbling to the floor. Williams whirled, reaching instinctively for a sidearm that wasn't there. Daxamite security guards were swarming the ballroom, weapons drawn. Shots rang out. A lone gunman, a human, lay crumpled and bloody on the marble. Crayon was shouting, his voice rising above the chaos. "It's an assassination attempt by a human terrorist. This is an act of war." Williams turned and ran, shoving his way through the panicked crowd. This was a setup. It had to be. But that didn't matter now. All that mattered was getting back to his shuttle and warning Earth. As he sprinted across the landing pad, the sick realization hit him. The fuse had been lit. The fire was coming. And if Earth wasn't ready, everything would burn. The counterstrike. Williams slammed his fist on the comms panel as the shuttle raced away from Zoria Prime. Graves's face flickered onto the screen. "General, it was a setup. The bombing, the assassin, all of it. Crayon played us like a damn fiddle," Williams snarled. Graves's brow furrowed. "I just got word from our intel boys. That shooter, 2-bit crook named Joro Sleck. Not so much as a parking ticket on his record until today. Daxamites must have hired him to take the fall. Crayon was quick on the trigger, sir. Called it an act of war before the body was even cold." The shuttle suddenly shuddered as alarms blared. The pilot shouted over his shoulder, "Daxamite warships. They're firing on us." Williams braced himself as the shuttle juked and jived, trying to evade the incoming plasma blasts. But it was a losing battle. They were sitting ducks out here, shields at 20%. The pilot yelled, "We can't take much more of this." Just as Williams was about to give the order to abandon ship, a new voice crackled over the comms. "Heard you could use a ride. Jace. Hop in." 3 sleek, angular shapes decloaked off the shuttle's port side, spitting blue plasma at the Daxamite pursuers. The Wraith frigates had arrived. Williams grinned. "Spectre, you beautiful bastard. Your timing is impeccable. I aim to please. Now get your ass aboard before those bugs turn you into space dust." The shuttle slid into the docking bay of Hawkins's frigate, the Phantasm, as its sister ships lay down covering fire. In moments, they were racing away, the Daxamite ships receding behind them. On the Phantasm's bridge, Williams found Hawkins hunched over a flickering holo display. The news from Earth was grim. Surprise attacks reported on human colonies in sectors 12, 15, and 23. The Daxamites were citing the embassy bombing as justification for a full-scale offensive. Earth had formally declared war in response. Casualties were. Hawkins slammed his fist on the console, cutting off the transmission. Crayon's been planning this for months. The colonies won't last long against a sustained assault. Williams studied the star map, an idea forming in his mind. Maybe they won't have to. Look at the Daxamite supply lines. Overstretched, undefended. If we hit them hard and fast, the colonies might just hold out till the main fleet arrives. Hawkins finished. I like the way you think, Jace. There's more, Williams said. He tapped a glowing red icon on the map. Crayon's flagship, the Deathbringer. Our intel puts it right in the middle of the supply chain. And I'll bet my last credit that Bug-Eye Bastard still has the Monroe Doctrine evidence aboard. Hawkins's eyes narrowed. You want to capture Crayon and the data. We bring those to the Council, prove the Daxamites manipulated this whole war. We could turn the other races against them. It's risky, Jace. The colonies are counting on us. If we go after Crayon, we might not make it back in time to help. Williams clenched his jaw, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. The colonies or Crayon, his duty or his vengeance. There was no easy choice, but maybe there was a right one. Set course to intercept the Deathbringer, he said at last. We're ending this one way or another. As the stars blurred into lines of light beyond the view screen, Williams could only hope he hadn't just doomed them all. The assault. The Wraith frigates streaked through the void, their hulls barely visible against the starry backdrop. On the bridge of the Phantasm, Williams and Hawkins huddled over the holo display, the ghostly blue light casting shadows across their faces. We'll use the stealth systems to get in close, Hawkins said, tracing a finger along the projected course. Then we'll launch the boarding pods and hit them hard and fast. Williams nodded. Crown won't know what hit him. We'll have that bug in chains and the evidence in hand before he can blink all four of his eyes. It's risky, Jace. We're betting everything on this one play. I know, but we don't have a choice. It's this or. The proximity alarm shrieked, cutting off Williams's words. He snapped his head up to the tactical display, his stomach dropping at the sight. Daxamite stealth fighters, a whole damn squadron, Hawkins shouted. They're on an intercept course. Williams cursed under his breath. The Daxamites had stolen that cloaking tech from the Centauri during the war. Now it was coming back to bite humanity in the ass. The space around the frigates erupted in plasma fire as the fighters screamed in, their angular black shapes shimmering into view as they closed to attack range. The frigate's point defense cannons roared to life, filling the void with crisscrossing beams of searing light. But the fighters were too fast, too agile. They danced through the defensive fire like ghosts, pummeling the human ships with plasma torpedoes. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Crewmen screamed as the impacts tossed them like ragdolls. Damage reports flooded in as the frigates wheeled under the onslaught. Hull breach in Section 12. Shields down to 20%. We're venting atmosphere on decks 4 and 5. Hawkins gripped the edge of the holo table, his knuckles white. Evasive pattern Delta 5. Keep those guns firing. The frigates lurched and spun, their engines straining as they tried to shake the attackers. The space around them blazed with the fire of their point defense cannons. Williams watched the tactical display in desperation as, one by one, the frigates winked out, consumed by the Daxamite assault. But Hawkins refused to yield. His hands flew over the controls as he barked orders to the crew and the other ships. Williams gripped the edge of the holo table, his heart pounding. The colonies, the evidence, the fate of the war, it all hung in the balance. Success or failure, victory or defeat, it would all be decided in the next few desperate minutes. Godspeed, Jake, he whispered. Godspeed. The final stand. A plasma bolt sizzled past Hawkins's head as he ducked into cover. The Daxamite troops were putting up a hell of a fight, turning every corridor into a killing field. But the Marines were just as stubborn. They inched forward, trading shots and grenades with the enemy, leaving a trail of scorch marks and bodies in their wake. Sergeant, Hawkins shouted over the din. Get a charge on that bulkhead. We need to keep moving. The sergeant nodded, sprinting forward under the cover of his squad's fire. He slapped a breaching charge on the sealed door and dove back into cover. The explosion ripped through the corridor, sending shrapnel and smoke billowing. Hawkins was up and moving before the dust settled, his rifle spitting death. They burst onto the bridge, rifles sweeping for targets, but there was no one there. Consoles flickered and sparked. Abandoned. Hawkins swore under his breath. Crayon was gone. He strode to the central console, his fingers flying over the controls. The ship's schematics flashed on the screen, along with a countdown timer. Hawkins's blood ran cold. The bomb. It was already armed and on its way, and Crayon's control over it. A damn lie. "Sir," one of the Marines called out, "I've got an idea. If we can overload the reactor." Hawkins followed his gaze, realization dawning. The flagship. We could use it as a weapon. Ram it into the bomb. But the cost. He punched in a command, hailing the phantasm. Williams's face filled the screen, tight with worry. Jace, the bomb's live. Crayon lied. He never had control over it. Williams cursed, slamming his fist on the console. Then what do we do? The colonies. We use the flagship, overload the reactor and detonate it right on top of the bomb. It's the only way. Silence stretched between them, heavy with understanding. Williams closed his eyes, the weight of command etched in every line of his face. "Do it," he said at last. "I'll order the frigates to fall back." And Hawkins, "Godspeed." The screen went dark. Hawkins turned to his Marines, his brothers and sisters in arms. They looked back at him, determination in their eyes. They knew what had to be done. "You heard the man," Hawkins said. "Let's get to that reactor." "Move." They'd raced through the corridors, alarms blaring and lights flickering. The ship shuddered as the frigates poured fire into its hull, drawing the Daxamites' attention away from the saboteurs in their midst. In the reactor room, Hawkins and his team worked feverishly, bypassing safeties and overriding failsafes. The reactor thrummed with barely contained power, ready to blow at the slightest provocation. Williams's voice crackled over the comm. "Hawkins, Crayon's escape pod just launched. I'm hailing him now, demanding surrender." Hawkins just shook his head. That arrogant bastard would never surrender. He'd gloat and mock, secure in his victory. The comm channel opened, Crayon's sneering voice filling the room. "You've lost, ape. Even if you destroy the bomb, you'll die with it. And there will be no one left to reveal the truth of our plan." Williams's reply was cold as the void. "I already transmitted the evidence to Earth. Your treachery will be exposed. Crayon, you failed." A scream of rage, then silence. Hawkins allowed himself a grim smile. Williams had outplayed the Daxamite at his own game. Now, the ship lurched as the flagship neared the bomb, the proximity alarms shrieking. It was now or never. Williams's voice came over the comm again, strained with emotion. "Jake, are you sure about this? There's got to be another way." Hawkins looked around at his Marines, at the determined set of their jaws, the fire in their eyes. They knew the price of freedom. They were ready to pay it. "It's been an honor, Jason," he said. "See you on the other side." He cut the link before Williams could reply. There was nothing left to say. Hawkins's hand hovered over the reactor controls, a strange calm settling over him. One last act of defiance. One last stand for humanity. The world went white. The flagship exploded in a searing flash of light, a miniature supernova that engulfed the bomb in its fiery embrace. On the bridge of the Phantasm, Williams and his crew shielded their eyes from the glare, the sensors confirming the bomb's destruction. Cheers erupted on the bridge, the crew clapping each other on the back, hugging and laughing in relief. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd saved the colonies. But Williams couldn't join in the celebration. He stared at the fading light of the explosion, the ghost of his friend's sacrifice etched in his mind's eye. The cost had been too high, far too high. He closed his eyes, taking a moment to compose himself. There would be time to grieve later. For now, there was still work to be done. "Set course for Earth," he ordered, his voice steady. "We're going home." As the Phantasm leaped into warp, leaving the battlefield behind, Williams made a silent vow. He would ensure that Hawkins's sacrifice was not in vain. He would expose the Daxamites' treachery, rally humanity and its allies. They would face the challenges ahead together, united and strong. The galaxy would never again underestimate the strength and resolve of humanity. Hawkins and his Marines had made sure of that. The aftermath. The comms panel blinked, and General Graves's face filled the screen, his expression grim. "Major Williams, we have a situation. The Daxamites have launched an all-out assault on our colonies in retaliation for Cran's death." Williams leaned forward. "How bad is it?" "The colonies are holding for now, but they're outgunned and outnumbered. The main fleet is still en route. You and the Wraith frigates are all they've got." Williams nodded, his jaw set. "Understood, sir. We'll hold the line." "See that you do, Major. Those colonists are counting on you." Graves out. The screen went dark. Williams turned to his crew. "You heard the man. Set course for the colonies, maximum burn. It's time to show the Daxamites what we're made of." The Phantasm leaked into warp, the stars blurring into streaks of light. As they dropped out of warp at the colonies, the scale of the battle became clear. The frigate squadrons were heavily engaged, weaving in and out of the Daxamite formations. The space around the colonies was lit up with the flashes of weapons fire and the blooms of exploding ships. Williams hailed the other frigates. "This is Major Williams. I'm assuming command. Form up on me, wedge formation." The frigates acknowledged, falling into position behind the Phantasm. Williams studied the tactical display, his mind racing. The Daxamites were using their numbers to try and box in the human ships, to negate their speed and stealth advantages. They had to change the game. "All ships, listen up. We're going to draw them away from the colonies, into the asteroid fields. We'll use the rocks for cover, hit them from all sides." The frigates broke formation, splitting into pairs and trios as they raced towards the asteroids. The Daxamites took the bait, surging after them like hounds after foxes, and so began a deadly game of cat and mouse, the frigates darting in and out of the rocks, ambushing the Daxamites before fading away again. Williams led from the front, the Phantasm dancing through the asteroids, its guns never silent. They took out a Daxamite cruiser with a daring strafing run, skimming so close to the larger ship that they could see the rivets in its hull. But the Daxamites kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. The frigates fought with everything they had, but one by one, they fell. Williams watched the lights wink out on his tactical display, each one representing lives lost, friends and comrades making the ultimate sacrifice. Soon, it was just the Phantasm, alone and battered, facing down a wall of Daxamite ships. Williams gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles white. This was it. This was where they would make their stand. But just as the Daxamites closed in for the kill, a massive warp rift tore open behind them. Earth's main fleet surged through, hundreds of ships, fresh and hungry for battle. They fell upon the Daxamites like wolves, their guns ripping into the alien ships. Caught between the fleet and the Phantasm, the Daxamites broke and ran, fleeing back towards their own space. Cheers erupted on the bridge of the Phantasm as Earth's ships moved to secure the colonies. But Williams didn't cheer. He stared at the tactical display, at the blinking lights that represented the fallen frigates and their crews. They had won the day, but at a terrible cost. And he knew, deep in his bones, that this was not the end. The Daxamites would be back, stronger and smarter. Humanity had shown its teeth today, and the galaxy would take notice. The real fight, Williams realized, was just beginning. A new dawn. The celebration was short-lived. As Williams's promotion ceremony wrapped up, he had barely pinned on his new colonel rank when an intelligence officer rushed in with an alarming report. Williams scanned the document, his brow furrowing. The Daxamites were coming. A massive fleet was assembling, far larger than the one that had attacked the colonies. Their target was Earth itself, Williams strode into the command center, the room buzzing with activity. Generals and admirals huddled around the central holo table, their faces grim. "Colonel Williams, good timing," General Graves said. "We just received word from the Galactic Council. They're offering support, but it will take time to mobilize their forces." Williams nodded, studying the fleet dispositions on the display. "So we're on our own for now. We're as ready as we can be."